Well, hello. Welcome to my cellar one more time. This is liable to be a long one, but that's okay because there won't be another one for a couple of weeks because I'm going to Game Hole next weekend. And tonight I assume the role of innocent bystander. Get right to it. Got a lot of stuff. Should be fun. Still looking for an energy drink sponsor. Any of you work for a company that's into that? All right. I was wondering a few things. When you used to run a campaign, did you have a specific way you like to set up the playing area or play in a specific room? Ever utilize music in your games to enhance or reinforce a mood? A mood you may have been wanting to get across. Ever try to utilize props of any sort? Separate your players from the others if their PC was separate from the party. Okay, and the rest of it's nice thank yous. Okay. When I first started running games, it was at University of Southern Illinois, Carbondale, and every Saturday we had a meeting room, half a meeting room. Well, we had a whole big double meeting room that had dividing doors. And so we tended to make noise, so we often closed them most of the way, and then the board gamers and the other guys played over there. However, there's 3/4 of the players would be on my side. Yeah, we played on 2 of those wonderful conference tables. Didn't have rolling chairs, as I recall, though I used the one that was in there a few times, but then somebody wised up and it went back where it belonged. We played long way, because that way I could see everybody, even down at the end. And I don't like long tables because I don't like to have to be sitting up there like a hawk mantling over my freshly killed rabbit so that nobody inadvertently sees any of my secrets. My secrets. The other place we played was my living room in the house of Makanda, as frequently as we could, and we had to play somewhat quietly because my infant daughter was sleeping down the hall. And on those nights, yes, we did use music. Anything that was weird, spacey. As I recall, I was into Bo Hansen by then and had a couple of his albums and played them. Just not trying to heighten any given mood, just trying to put a strange vibe into the air. Never used props. Maybe a cube, or yeah. In that one there was a cube that they found, and then they were trying to find the slot that it went into. But that's probably the only prop I ever used. Now there might have been imaginary props. Oh, you found the key, keep it. I didn't have a key for it. Though I do use a prop in the Wheel of Blame. And one of the first ones was keys, because I had a whole bunch of these little keys. And so you had to have a key to get out. Now you need a token to get out. And I pass out little, I made up a bunch of, had Ironwind cast me up a bunch of pewter ones. So if you're playing in one of my games at Game Hole, you'll more than likely get one of those. I never separated the party. I say never ever. Well, even it might have happened once or twice, but I never had two groups going in 2 different rooms. Though I did allow note passing back and forth, and I did allow, though I didn't encourage, note passing to me. That was okay. Remember, we were all really new then and trying everything out and see how it fit. So that's the way we played it then. And I'm told now that I sound better in surround sound, 7 or 8 channel. 7 or 8 channel Curmudgeon. I recommend everyone get their headphones on. Okay, I don't know if I could take that much of me. Okay, from a tabletop wargaming perspective. Early on as a DM, I envisioned the thief as a recon element, scouting ahead of the party, looking for traps and possible enemy forces. Mirrors were good for signaling the party from a distance during daylight wilderness exploration. The fighter was the first line of offense, defense, grunts. The magic user employs spells against groups, sleep, etc., similar to military artillery units, and clerics were there for combat support and handling injuries, like combat medics. Always try to pass those critical tactical elements to the players in my group. Am I off base or on track? I'm a Marine veteran, and he studied military tactics during NOM, even before he went in. It just feels as if tactical execution plays a big part in D&D combat. You have a hand in that? Thanks to your service, sir. Well, much more than combat. Execution, quality execution. SROs. I think, no, not standing room onlys. Standing operating procedures, SOPs, pardon me. When I used to run games at cons that were an adventure module oriented, and they were traveling outdoors, before the game even started, I made them work out their watches. You know, how many people were going to be on which watch when, because in tournament games, I foreshortened the time it took for wizards to get back, and some of the hitting. I made some hit points heal quicker, because after all, it's a convention. Let's see, where was I going with that? The standard OP. So if something happened during the night and I rolled to determine what portion of the night it was, then I knew who was on watch. I knew their perception skills or their listening skills or whatever. And so that determined whether or not the party got snuck up on. They aroused the party and told them something was happening, whatever. So SOPs are a great thing. They also apply to the group in their movements, in their explorations. Who's on point, who's watching in the back, who's looking for traps, who's looking for hidden panels, secret panels, hidden doors, etc. And then you as the DM always know what the probability, the running standard probability is of them finding something or noticing something. Now, if you want to get more involved and play the game at a slower rate, then the players can say, okay, I'm checking this, I'm checking that. And so now you have a greater possibility of finding something or detecting something, but that you've slowed the gameplay down considerably. So it's all a matter of playing style and how you want to do it. But I like the idea of, okay, you do this, you do that. The party's marching order, indoors or out, should be considered in the same way. If you have dwarves or hobbits or whatever you call short, tiny people, put them in. Especially if they have a sling or some type of missile weapon, put them in the front where the back row can shoot over them. After all, come on, it's fantasy. Let's have fun with it. You aren't going to put the elf up in front and have the halfling bowman stand behind him and try to shoot through. But know those things in advance. For one thing, I used to tell the players this when I started making them do it, and they kind of grumbled, and I said, trust me, this is going to give you another 45 or 50 minutes of actual playing time because it will speed the game up. And in virtually every case, they're going, oh yeah, that really did speed up the game because it was no who's on it. We knew what was going on. we've made our rolls, we made our perceptions, whatever. We found things, or we didn't, and we went on. So, no, as long as your group's so happy with it. Now, you can't go screaming at them, calling them pukes and stuff when they miss something. But you don't seem like the person would probably do that anyway. Okay, hey Tim, when I was at high school in the 80s and early 90s, okay, how long did it take you to get through? No offense. The only war games I knew of were a modern ship combat game. I forgot the name. Maybe it was Harpoon. Warhammer 40,000, AD&D, Battle System, and Advanced Squad Leader. I've heard you say you don't like Warhammer, and no, I don't care for it. And what about the AD&D Battle System? No, I don't care for that. I didn't see the necessity. And unfortunately, I'm biased against Advanced Squad Leader because at one point, John Hill and I, the designer of Squad Leader, were good friends, and he hated what they'd done to his game, so I kind of picked that up too. They needlessly complicated. All right. Another aspect of high-level play that I'm not seeing described in the random number is the random number generation, i.e. RNG metrics, random number generation metrics. This is where the difficulty or lack thereof in the system is derived from outside of the role-playing aspect. Low-level play has about a 25% die value success rate. High-level play can exceed 75%. Now, this is math crap, and I'm bad at this, so I'm sharing it with you. 75% die value success rates due to the experience levels of magical sublimation. So I'm guessing what this is saying is that low-level guys have a harder time making their rolls than high-level do. Well, yeah, that's the bummer of being a low-level guy. This is why you want to be a high-level guy. Do you consider the game metrics when designing your encounters based upon these factors versus the party level, or do you dial the difficulty up or down on the fly depending upon whether the encounter is going one way or another? I never dial up or down, but I might get a touch nostalgically lenient, but very rarely. When I design encounters, and particularly when I'm building an overall modular adventure, it's a metric of it's something I put together myself. I can't give you a formula. I can just give you what I use in it. Oh, and by the way, I won't go before I go any further. You can see I got a thing to hang behind me. However, it's not long enough. It's almost 5 feet, and I need one about 7. So if anybody knows of one of these, it's about 7 feet long. Let me know. This thing's real light. It's like a hanky. But I got tired of, what's that up behind your shoulder on the right side? Questions. Anyway, back to where I was. But I forgot to talk about that. So I had to do it when I thought of it. How many hit points does the party possess? What's the average saving throw level approximately of the party? What's their approximate healing capabilities? Okay, what kind of potions am I giving them? What kind of spells are available? Of course, I have no control over the spells, but I can always toss in a scroll if I feel the necessity. Nowadays, the game I run, that's not as much of a consideration. But because I tailor each encounter to the group and the way it's been going, and if they are showing a distinct lack of thinking about something, well, the next one's liable to bite them in the butt because they didn't think of something. Anyway, it's a metric that's involved with no one encounter before the big showdown, no one encounter being potentially overpowering, potentially taxing, And any encounter can become overpowering by a combination of bad rolls on the player's part and absurdly good rolls on the DM's part. When I was designing an adventure for Iron Wind to go with their Chaos Wars reboot, it involves orcs and goblins. Trekking through the mountains trying to loot the tomb of a dwarven king. And I had a relatively weak, certainly weak by my normal metric, caravan early in the encounter so they could, to have a little practice getting their evil on. Because everybody playing orcs and goblins is not a normal mindset. And in the very first play test, what I thought was a really puny couple of guards and nearly wiped the party out. So good thing I play test those kind of things. So I made some adjustments and changed a few things so that was less likely to happen. But it can always happen. Can't roll anything to hit, and everything that falls out of the sky falls on you. That happens. It happens. The dice are like cards when you're playing poker. The cards run where they want. They run hot, they run cold. You just wait till the cards come back around. Well, you can't do that in D&D, but the principle of running hot and cold anyway. Don't want to get too sidetracked tonight. Got too much stuff. And I know when I say that I occasionally will, if the party is floundering and we're only early into the adventure, maybe only an hour into our allotted 4-hour time at a con or, whatever, I might start rolling morale for the bad guys, for instance, and have them break and run before they beat the party to a pulp. But then, of course, the party has to use up all their potions, all their Red Bulls, all their NOSes, and the rest of the time is fraught with menace because they don't have all their heals anymore. So I may lay up a little there, but knowing that what's coming next is going to be what it is. All right, I enjoyed your answers to my pesky fighters using magic question. Fantastic to get a bit of McCandid lore and hear your advice. I like the solutions, okay. Answer interesting to the cleric problems. I like your take on clerical magic. And keeping classes clearly defined. Now, one thing I don't know if I discussed about my world of Mechana and magic is that I subscribe to a theory that there's a mana, an energy, the force. I know I break canon when I go into sci-fi. And that on my world of Mechanda, there was a cataclysmic, cosmic sundering. Planets, things sank beneath the waves, other things came up from beneath the waves, all because the world was almost cracked by a bunch of magic users that did not have their handle on what they thought they did, and they did something horrible, which then set up the backstory of my Chromatic Council, who oversees all the magic and all the magical guilds and yada da da da. Long story short, what that makes in my world is high and low magic mana areas. There might be areas, and they're very rare, and the low ones are more prevalent than the high ones, but it's just an area where spells only work at 2/3 efficiency, or oh shit, they work at 130% efficiency or worse. So the little magic missile you were casting into the fire pit to get the fire started just incinerated all your wood. Oops. Um, there are ways to get around this. There are methods of determining. There are ways to detect where these high and low areas are, and I'm not going to give them away. But several people using these principles in some playtests have figured out devious and sundry ways to keep bad accidents from happening to them. I play, board games. I play Ultimate General Civil War through Steam to fill my Wargame fix. I still have a compulsion after 50 years. So do I. 60 years in my case. Not bragging, just older. I'll have to look for that because I got a bunch of stuff on Steam. So I'll have to look at that and see what it looks like because I like the American Civil War. Captures the essence of old war games produced by AHSPI and adds fatigue factors while illustrating well Civil War batters where flank attacks roll up line quickly. Most of Sheridan's battles in the valley. Yeah, if it does that, I'm interested. I'll look into that. Okay. People asking questions here they have no business knowing. What's the deal with Bulette young? How do they reproduce? I guess. Both the Dragon article that introduced them and the Monster Manual mention that no small bulettes have been found. Well, I'll let you in on a little secret. They're oviparous. They lay eggs. And they lay eggs much like the crocodilians that they're crossed from, and the turtles that their genes also have. They lay them in certain soil conditions. They only produce generally 2 or 3 in a clutch, occasionally 4, sometimes 1. And they tend to guard the nest area. And when they hatch, they immediately start gorging on whatever the parents can kill and bring in. And they grow astonishingly fast. High-level adventures hard. Maybe DM should follow Gary's lead. G1, G2, G3 Giant series seems pretty good at it. Yeah, it was, because, by God, that was lethal. Also, the first real modules beyond Temple of the Frog and possibly B1. Yeah, those giants were, damn. Started out with hill giants, and then it's fire giants, and, stone giants. But yeah, they just kept getting nastier. Another curmudgeon once said, why treasure for XP? Because it changes monsters into a hazard instead of experience points on the hoof. Okay. That's that if you can produce that mindset shift in your group, that's a pretty good rationale. Not for picking up coins in the street, mind you, but for extracting treasure from dangerous locations or encounter. Okay. In that case, and I always thought it should be this, anything you kill along the way is bonus points. But you're on a mission. And if you don't have to kill those 7 goblins, you don't. If circumstance commands it, okay, well, they're worth something. Or if something somewhat nastier has moved in where you're trying to go, well, gulp, kill it, and fulfill the mission. Bonus points. As long as they don't kill you. Let's see. Reading someone's comment, high-level play has always been the house of power gamers. They just want to break the system like hackers. It's fun for them. Someone could just as easily say low-level play has always been about boring, stoic, dry, cantankerous, mean DMs who just want to make player characters suffer. It would be just as much an opinionated, biased blanket statement as that one. You're right, it would be. I don't believe either one of them. Remember, I don't write these comments. I simply respond to them. All right. got into something here that's a really long, involved question, and I'm going to cop out. How do you deal with a player who always elects a hit location, distinctive move during attack rolls? I don't do that shit. I don't do critical hits. I don't do called attacks, except in certain very distinct circumstances. Not as a rule. I just don't deal with that shit. Sorry, that just kind of renders the rest of your question moot, and I couldn't answer it anyway because I don't deal with that shit. Never have never liked hit location. Never liked. I've been biased on critical hits. I tend to let them happen more in the favor of the adventurers, but not a lot. Okay, I like this question a lot, because I could spend the next 20 minutes on it, but I won't. An NPC friend of my 4th and 5th level PCs recently purchased a tavern in a small town. I want to include something interesting and surprising in the tavern that might draw my PCs into an adventure. Do you have any ideas? Oh, yes. Down in the lower place where they store the mead barrels and the most secure area underneath, while rolling around old barrels and whatever, lo and behold, there's a round trap door, very carefully, just the size of what would be the big barrel in front of the barrel cradle, about the size of a ton, TUN. And upon opening it, you see a surprisingly clean and well-made earthen tunnel with beams every so often and support leading off in the direction of the ruined whatever, some distance away, the other side of the village, top of the hill or whatever. And what you choose to make a rabbit hole out of the castle, entrance underneath that hasn't been found before, so there may be a few areas under there unlooted. That's one thing. Rooting around in that cellar again, come upon a chest, and there's a mystical object. Oh man, there are so many things you could find when you're giving an old tavern a thorough cleaning. That's where I would run with it. Okay, long involved question about long fall or failed saving throw and being destructive of items and things the party or the individual is carrying. And I understand that the bolt counters want to have 23 saving throws to see what survived the fall, assuming and given that the player character survived the fall, or got toasted, or frozen, or electrified, or whatever else happened, but they managed to make the saving throw. The questioner makes the point that every now and again that's quite a bit of fun for the rest of the people at the table until it becomes their turn to do the same thing. Okay, that's a dynamic of your game, and I can I play with a lot of people. I play with a lot of friends who we spend most of our time figuring out ways to betray each other and backstab, even in board games. And don't get me talking about Illuminati. So I can see where if that's a dynamic of your game, that's fine. I just always kind of let common sense rule, and rather than saving throws a bunch of crap, if the damage was such that half of it didn't kill the player character, or that it didn't damage durable goods, steel swords, iron weapons. Might have burned up a wooden shield, might have burned the plumes off the helmet. If you were carrying a bag of something, scrolls or whatever, okay, there's a chance that they might have been toast. But to roll for every single little item, no. Except, and if they fell, if it was a fall that the PC survived, I'd only roll for those breakable items. However you carry your oil or your potions or whatever. Breakable stuff. If you want to do more, okay. If it's just how much gravel do you want in your game? And that's in no way deprecating. Everybody likes a little different amount of grit in their game. And that's good. Decide how much grit you want. Now, in a follow-up, another commenter said that's an interesting scheme. Well, I didn't go into the whole scheme. Did you come to streamlining a bit by cutting down the number of rolls, or is the high roll frequency a big part of it for you guys? And he says at times that actually happens is quite low. Low-level characters are not eating 10D fireballs or the spray of a black dragon's breath on the regular. The success rate goes up against those as they become higher. And if Ross's range at 15 to 20% per incidence of personal inventory, it's not frequent, but it creates better play dynamics. Yeah, you got to go out and replace all that stuff. All right, now here we're going into about clerics and weapons. Sometimes when I cut and paste these, that looks like a good idea, and then I get to go in here, and I wonder why I did. If medieval priests had tried going around with halberds and long swords, they might have been accused of plotting revolt. Good point. You could say that clerics don't wear armor or carry weapons of war as a way to keep from being seen as mercenaries or as agents of the state. Okay, good point. It's important for a holy man to be trusted by the common people who might feel great distrust or animosity towards secular authorities. Okay. Now, and also, let's not forget, well, maybe this comes up. You could say the God of mercy and healing doesn't like for the priest to use weapons of war or show any desire to do violence. Why should they grant healing spells to you if you're not just going to go around chopping people's bodies apart? You want to heal people after you just ran through that guy, or you want to heal people after you just ran that guy through with a spear? Nope, no healing for you. Okay, you have to understand or accept that the cleric, as originally perceived, was founded on the medieval Friar Tuck on the one hand, and Bishop Odo, William the Conqueror's brother, on the other, and try to be amalgam somewhere between the two, because there are not a lot of fictional examples to draw from. And these arguments are good, and I agree. If you're a healer, it wouldn't be strange for strangers seeking help to run up to you and surprise you at any hour of the day or night. And it might even be somebody who's cursed. Yeah, well, these are all good reasons. Evil priests shed blood. Good priests don't. Yeah, okay, those are all absolutely valid reasons. Don't carry sharp weapons because you might accidentally kill somebody. It was an Old Testament as well as a Quranic prohibition against the shedding of blood. The Mongols did not shed the blood of anyone in the royal family, which after a certain point was anybody who had ever been descended in any shape or form from Genghis. They were rolled in a carpet, and a tumon of cavalry was galloped back and forth over the carpet a couple of times, and of course it soaked up all the blood, so no blood was shed, and the execution was a success. All right. Also, he thinks the blade barrier spell is the strangest thing in D&D. I don't understand it at all. So much for avoiding bloodshed. It sounds pretty evil to me. Not if you make use of it as a defensive spell. Blade barrier is a wonderful defensive spell. You're being pressed in. Find a room with a crumbled door. Fine. Put the blade barrier in the door and say, "Come on in, guys." If you use it in a purely defensive manner and they persist in running into it and dying, golly, too bad. Okay, I'm going to talk about this again in a minute and later on. Demons are misunderstood. Yes, but that's just gold. Insert dire warning here. It is simultaneously the smartest thing you know. It's telepathic, and it's insane at the same time. Yeah, it's misunderstood. When it comes to weapon speed judgment, it allows to also factor in the weapon length, since the guy with a dagger would have to get it within enough range to make a hit. It is why I like spears and polearms. You keep your enemy far enough from your body to never get attacked. I'm going to continue on with a couple more that followed this. Agreed on weapon length. Longer weapons had priority to strike at the onset. I would rule that if you got hit, the opponent with the longer weapon was able to stave you off and out of reach. You could either engage with a weapon of similar length or breach the weapon's reach advantage when and if the opponent missed. Gives players a better appreciation for the ranseurs and speedums when the orcs can hit them, but they can't get in close enough to strike back with their pesky long swords. Yeah, it does. Those orcs with polearms are nasty stuff. The other important factor with weapon length is whether you could use it in a confined space within a dungeon, like my cleric back in the day taking his lucerne hammer into the dungeon. Well, yes. I rule that anything with a 4 or more foot length is extremely hazardous in the dungeon, because if you figure whirling it, whether it's a hammer or you're going into some kind of dervish sword dance or something like that, you're going to take up 8 feet of the typical 10-foot. So those are the things that that you need to keep on top of all the time with longer weapons, are because you're not considering using a sword in that 10 by 10 stereotype a great whooping, slooping, but more of a chop or a thrust or a hack, not a great, Braveheart swooping around, cut the guy in half thing. Polearms don't do worth a damn underground. Not in a corridor. Not in most corridors. Depends on how you build your corridors. But, think about it. Okay, the corridor outside the King's Hall is, obviously places of state, but underground. Got to remember. Let's see. Same goes for fighters with two-handed swords in close quarters trying to gang up on a single opponent. But I allow it But if they miss their target, I make a second hit roll to see if they catch an ally by accident that is within the proximity of the space required to wield it effectively. Excellent. And he goes and says 10 feet. Otherwise, the penalty to hit and damage can suffice if they are wishing to half-hand the weapon, which is a historically accurate technique, giving their allies a chance to team up. Yes, logic. Logic. All right, going on the weapon thing. The problem with spears is if you lapse and someone gets inside the head, you're basically defenseless. Pikemen in the 15th to 17th century often carried arming swords for this reason. Well, yeah, that's a pike. That's a 12 to 16 foot pole. I'm being nice. Who would logically think to take a 16-foot Swiss pike underground? Who would take a 16-foot Swiss pike up into the audience chamber in the castle? we need a quick application of logic here. Logic. Yeah, if somebody gets inside your 16-foot spear, you need to be able to have enough time to draw an arming sword and stick them with it. But if you're talking about a normal 5.5 foot spear, even a 6-foot spear, which unless you're talking about a boar spear or something, is a reasonable assumption as a average size spear. Okay, let's be Vikings and have an 8-foot spear. Now you're having ceiling issues. Now here's another one that argues that it depends on the length of the spear. A shorter spear can be pulled back quickly and still used effectively. With a pike, yeah, you're screwed without a backup weapon. Okay, now how short are you going to have a spear and still call it a spear? An assegai? All right, a Zulu assegai? About that long, most of which was blade, which would look very good on the end of a spear, a spear shaft. A wooden handle of 1.5 feet. Is that a spear? Again, your mileage may vary. Okay, all right, new topic. Compared to the average retail price of $30 to $40 for a 5e campaign book, many of the equivalent first and second edition books, like Desert of Desolation, Temple of Elemental Evil, etc., come in much less, averaging under 10. My question to you, considering your experience of the backroom side of the RPG business, is how much in your mind is a reasonable price for a module that will show a good return without coming across as overly expensive to the consumer? Okay. We at TSR used to have a formula. I don't know how appropriate it is today. If it cost us $1 to produce, the retail was 10, because we're often only going to get 3 from the wholesaler. All right, 50, 10, and 2 was a common discount. 50% off, an additional 10% if paid, and within 30 days, or 50 and 10, and then 2% more if it's paid within 10 days. I don't remember. I didn't do that crap at Dragon, but we did at TSR. So there was a sliding discount scale. So you had to make sure that when you gave away all those discounts, because the distributor has to have a room for a profit, who sells it to the storekeeper, who has to have a room for a profit for him to set it up on his shelf. And the storekeeper generally gets the largest chunk, as should be. Now, today you have a different metric you can use. if you're not wholesaling, if you're just going to do a Kickstarter, for instance, and you want to sell, you want to produce 1,000 games, big board game, we'll say, and you price out all the parts, and the parts in China or wherever you price them are going to be $11.50 for 1,000 set. The parts for 1,000 games are going to run out $11.50. If you're not selling at a discount to stores, and you don't want to feel like you're making an obscene profit, and you're never making an obscene profit if the person buying it is happy with the price that they pay for it. It's just like a deal. When both parties are happy, it's a good deal. This is a deal between you and the consumer. They're happy with the price. Now, your conscience is your conscience. If you are going to make available to small mom and pop shops, up to 20 or 25 at a time, you're going to build that into your stretch goals, that you're going to print that many more, and you're going to have to set a price so that when you give them those books at the price they've paid, they can have a profit to make on top. If you're going to sell them all yourself, Scientific Barbarian is a post-apocalyptic little digest. He sells them all himself. He doesn't job lot any out to stores. If he gets much bigger, he's going to have to job lot some of it. If your selling price is too high, they won't buy it. If it's too low, you're cheating yourself. There is no magic rule of thumb. There isn't any. God knows we've all looked for it. You have to make a good enough profit on your first half of the order that you make. If you print more than you sell, like in a Kickstarter, and you fund printing 1,200 and you bump it up yourself to 1,350. Well, those 1,500 that you have to sell, if you price it too high, you won't sell them. If you price it too low, you'll cheat yourself. And if you price it differently than the Kickstarter price, you can't undercut the Kickstarter price. That's the whole point of it, getting in on the beginning and getting the best price. But Kickstarted games can go to stores. Case in point, when Ogre, a few years back, decided to do the enormous redo of Ogre with all the beautifully printed, thick cardstock, shiny finish Ogre models, they fulfilled the Kickstarter, which was a wild success, and they made a bunch more that eventually ended up in stores. The only profit that's too much is the one that the public won't buy at a reasonable return rate on your investment. We're not a socialist society. Businesses run on a profit. If you don't make a profit, there's no point in doing it. I believe anybody that just loves this for the sake of the game and spends all the time and effort is either a saint or, I don't really want to be insulting here, but a person that could better spend their time elsewhere. Or a true fan of the game who just wants to give out their stuff, and if there's any out there that are giving out good stuff, more power to them. As a member of several OSR social media groups, the entire WotC controversies kind of baffle me as well, although I find it amusing but impossible to ever get too worked up over. You'll get post after post online of folks claiming that they'll only ever play TSR versions of the game and have zero interest in anything that came after 1990 or so. Yet in the next post, get furiously upset about some optional rule that 5e has come up with to appeal to the socially conscious teenaged and college-aged players of today. Like you, I think it's silly. Play the edition you like. What a world we live in. When I was growing up board gaming, there are only a limited number available anywhere. Now the selection of games, we even have editions that we can play. What a world we live in. All right, where was I? I'm sorry. It's silly, but ultimately I don't care. WotC has to sell products to stay afloat, just like any company, right? And this is the thing that boosts the bottom line, and obviously they're going to go for it, right? They have I'm sure Hasbro has shareholders. As far as demons being misunderstood, I think it's important to think about where the current generation has learned about fantasy, mostly video games and Japanese anime and comics, where we had very few we had few movies, TV shows, and zero games to base our ideas of a fantasy realm upon, and had to instead turn to books of the kind outlined in Appendix N. Kids today have thousands of sources. Many of them feature anti-heroes and demonic or possessed characters, as often are the protagonists. Okay, that goes on as he doesn't like the music that's been put out in the last 20 years, but that doesn't matter. He likes his music, and you can like yours. People are just getting worked up over nothing to find something to get worked up about, and they'll find outrageous things wrong with a whole new generation picks it up and starts playing it wrong. And then you'll get a bunch of pink-haired SJWs blowing up their social media groups and getting up on YouTube saying stuff like, kids these days, back in my day, about some rule a company establishes to meet popular opinions of their core audience at the time. The cycle will once again come around. It'll be fine. Now I have a very interesting follow-up to that. All the original D&D material is open license and free to the public now. WotC who? That's right. All right, now this is a question I got through another medium, and for whatever reason I said okay and copied it and pasted it over here. When the shield spell was revised for AD&D, it negated magic missile. This represents a nerf from the chainmail game. Why was it done? I'm familiar with the refrain, different games, different rules, but I'd like to understand it if I can. Was a to-hit roll ever considered for magic missile to be able to attack heroic level magic users? Or would that have to run counter to design intent? DX treads a middle ground between OD&D and AD&D and seems most faithful to the original games. Grateful for my answer. Well, as to why Gary decided that shield spell would negate magic missile, I'm not sure when that change came in. I only know about the argument that I had about magic missile with Gary. It went on over weeks. Months, actually, before AD&D came out. I always thought that the original magic missile from the original books, whereas either you hit the target with a mortar barrage of four tubes, or you missed it altogether, was way too radical when it's the only spell a low-level guy can carry. Way too terrible. So I successfully argued that it hits all the time, but it's only 1 or 2 points of damage. It's for going around and putting the coup de grace on creatures that are on their last legs. It's for lighting a trash fire, a campfire, whatever. It was a handy spell for a low-level wizard to have. Now, handy spell for low-level wizards. Magic Shield negates them. I'm guessing because it's such a low-level spell and it had an always hit factor. Seems like a logical thing to me. If a magic shield is thrown, oh shit, my magic missiles don't work. there's always trade-offs. Not everything works against everything. That's my take. Okay. Back to one of the chief topics, and I was on 2 different streams this week defending myself and other people defending me on my behalf about how bad we were back in the day for all the horrible, racist, terrible things that we designed into the game. And that has now morphed into demands that, in a sense, the old school must bow to 5e and admit that we're sorry, oh, mea culpa, mea culpa. Bullshit. We were what we are. Some of us evolved, some of us didn't. We are what we are. Some of us still are what we were. Doesn't matter. I'm not bound to any addition. I got so misunderstood when I said that they're coming out with an edition and I wouldn't buy that one either. People took it to mean I was boycotting WotC. No. I said, but it was misinterpreted, that I didn't have an interest in buying it because I liked what I was playing. It's the same as saying, I'm not going to buy a new car. The one I have is still great. No, can't do that. And of course, now I have a question. If we have to get really PC, think of all the games and things we played as a kid that we're going to have to change. We're not going to have to be cattle workers and Native Americans. I guess we can still be cops and robbers if we don't specify that the robbers are a specific ethnic group. And one of the enormous insults, I think, backhanded slap, not half as smart as they think it is, just contemptible, is a new character called Thaco the Clown, who is definitely a slap on the old school, Thaco, and is described as a gatekeeper. Well, I have a classic response for those of you that at WotC that have all this weird shit running through your minds. Here's one of my responses, and here's the other one. And as Lewis Black would do, okay, screw it. All right, that's the end of the scripted part of tonight. Go to Gamehole next week. We'll not be doing a video next weekend. We're planning to tape a video going both up and back from Gamehole in the car. We'll see how that comes out. We're going to be, safety first. Don't need to look at the camera when it's sitting on the dashboard and I'm driving. Anyway, going to do that. So it'll be a couple of weeks before I do another Curmudgeon. If you're coming up to Gamehole, I was digging around through a tub of stuff the other day and found a few hardbound Arredondos and a couple of hardbound Arredondo is Snake Riders. I think I found 1 or 2 hardbound Curse of the Weaver Queens. I'm going to be bringing up about 10 Gygax 2s that I'll put in an address for the corrected article, and I'll even sign it for you. And I'm bringing up one Gygax number 1 that is signed by everyone on the masthead and is in pristine condition. So that's how I'm going to make my spending money. selling old magazines and a couple old books. So come on by. I'll be at the independent publishers booth a couple of times. I'm scheduled for a couple of times. I'll more than likely drop in the morning part unannounced. Just have to catch me there or one of the announced times. And I hope to see you there. Bring your vax card. Bring plenty of masks, because you can't get in without a vax card, and we have to be wearing masks the whole time we're indoors unless we're eating or drinking. Eating M&Ms one at a time would be eating, wouldn't it? Play with whatever the vibe is of the group or the room you're playing in. In other words, don't be a dick. Go with the flow. Let's have a great time. We haven't been together for so long. Let's not make it a super spreader event. Dodata Govi.
Oh, hello. I'm still figuring out when this thing starts. Welcome to my cellar.
He's the curmudgeon who wrote about the dungeons. Now he's the feller, live from the cellar. Talks about D&D and old school RPGs. Still quite a feller, the curmudgeon in the cellar.
Last man around when them rates went down. Calling Gary in that Lake Geneva town. Hey Gary, it's an awful mess. Let me edit, we'll have success. D&D and Dragon Magazine.
He's the curmudgeon who wrote about the dungeons. Now he's the feller, live from the cellar. Talks about D&D and old school RPGs, but he's still quite the feller, the curmudgeon in the cellar.
Magic missile, it's a mortar shell. Make it hit in the first level spell. Brought psionics to the game to attack that wizard's brain. ESR and fantasy, collection of micro armory. Titan with tramp under a tree, high as could be.
He's the curmudgeon who wrote about the dungeons. Now he's the feller, live from the cellar. Talks about D&D and old school RPGs, but he's still quite the feller, the curmudgeon in the cellar. Still quite the feller, the curmudgeon in the cellar. Curmudgeon.